Hello, beautiful people. I'm Marakita Solis, vegan empowerment expert, and I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Angela Crawford. She's here to help us with the stages of change. She has a beautiful presentation that's going to enlighten us on how we can understand better and communicate better with the people in our lives that we really want to maybe hear us and to help them with their health, just to communicate in peace for them and peace for ourselves. So welcome, Dr. Angela, and everyone, please give StreamYard permission to use your name so we'll see who's commenting, and we're going to have questions at the end. So go ahead and put your questions in the comments and we will answer them at the end of this beautiful presentation. So welcome.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love what you're doing with this work because you're sharing the vegan message in a way that is so powerful. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored. So I really want to hear. This is going to be so important. This information is huge, and it's enlightening and brings so much peace once we understand better about the stages of change.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to be here. And as I had mentioned to Marakita, I was hoping to make some slides that would make what I'm sharing a little easier to follow, but bad storm where I live, power outages. So I did the best I could, and no slides in the equation here. But we'll have a chance for questions at the end. So if there's something that I went too fast on, you can ask about it. So just a brief overview of what I want to cover today. First, just an introduction of why the stages of change matter when it comes to being a vegan and wanting to be able to communicate about our vegan passion and values. Then I'm going to do a really brief meditation that sort of sets the stage for what we're working on today. I'll share a little bit about myself so you know my background. And then I'll dive into the stages of change and what those are. And then we'll talk about some key lessons and takeaways from the stages of change. And we'll have the Q&A time after that. So any questions you've put in the chat, we can cover at that time. So in thinking about the stages of change, first of all, what are they? Two psychologists, James Prochaska and Carlo Di Clemente, developed this model called the stages of change model. It's also sometimes called the trans-theoretical model of change. And it's used in psychology a lot to help understand the process of people overcoming certain patterns in their life or making health changes. And it also can be really helpful for us understanding the process by which people become vegan. And so that's the context that I'm going to be using it. But it's a model that's been around for a while. And it's helpful for understanding how change works so that we can maybe work more effectively in supporting both our own change process and whatever we're working on changing in our lives, as well as supporting others when we're hoping to inspire them to change something. And, you know, for most of us, when we became vegan, there was an awakening that we had that led us to massively change our lifestyle and our whole mindset, our identity. So much has changed for us. And with that awakening and that change, many of us have the desire, not only for those in our life to understand us so that they can be on board with, you know, our new vegan life, but also many of us want to inspire others to change too, because we want to create a vegan world, a world of compassion, a world of justice, sustainability, flourishing for all beings. So we really, many of us want to be able to communicate better about veganism in a way that would actually inspire change and really to end the suffering of animals. But all too often, you know, when we try to communicate, many of us get pushed back, defensiveness, negative reactions, which then can make us feel sad and frustrated, angry, despairing. You know, why can't others see what we see? And, you know, so trying to do more of the same in our communication, the anger or the frustration, it's understandable we'd feel that, but it doesn't lead to the change we're wanting to create. So we'll be talking a little bit about how understanding the stages of change could help us be more effective and hopeful in our communication. So that's where we're going with this.
All right. Can you give me 1 second? I'm trying to make sure that I see us live. And for some reason, I don't see us live. But
It says live in the upper corner.
say live.
5 minutes.
Okay.
Hopefully we are.
I hope we are too. Okay.
If there's somebody there, maybe they can comment to say that they see us. But I do say live up in the corner there.
I'm looking at that too. Okay. Let's go. Let's go for it.
Okay. So with that introduction, I wanted to guide you in a little bit of a mini meditation. This is very brief, but it sort of sets the stage for what we're covering so that you can be in touch with what do you want to gain from our time together. So if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes, but you don't have to. You can just look off and gaze at something in front of you. And just take a few deep breaths just to sort of center yourself. And one way that is really helpful for grounding or centering is breathing in as if you're breathing in the breath coming in through the top of your head, all the way down through your body, down into your legs, your feet, and into the earth. And just feel yourself connected with where you're sitting. Feel your connection with the earth. And breathing out wide, feel the space around you, breathing out to the edges of the room. And as you breathe deep and wide like that, feeling your grounded center, I just invite you to picture the vegan world that you would love to see. And you can picture what would it look like if all of us had awakened to this vegan message of compassion. How would the world look? How would it feel? What would it be like for us to all eat in ways that are sustainable, compassionate, and nurturing to our own health and well-being as well? And you might also connect with, the companion animals you love, scenes in nature that bring you joy. Just what are your reasons for being vegan? And how would it help to be a better communicator? How would that help create this vision that you are wanting to see? Knowing that we each have a part to play. We're each like a cell in the body. We're not all the same cell. We each have different roles and different functions. And so just connecting with what your own contribution might be, your own part to play. And so just a few more deep breaths just to take that in and know this is a practice you can return to. If you find it hard to connect with this right now, that is totally fine. This can be something that you might revisit from time to time and see what happens. And so now just coming fully into our space together with renewed hearts and readiness to see what you might learn or take away from this time that can help you on your vegan journey. And coming back fully. And so it shall be. So I'd like to share a little bit about my background so you know a little bit of who I am. I'm Angela Crawford, and I'm a psychologist. I'm also certified as a vegan lifestyle coach and educator through Main Street Vegan Academy. And I also did a plant-based nutrition certificate from eCornell, the T. Colin Campbell Center. And I became first vegetarian and then later vegan. And my journey was becoming vegetarian 15 years ago when I saw a program on PBS about how the conditions for workers in a meat processing plant. And I really didn't know much about any of these issues. And what I saw in this program was that the workers were mostly immigrants. They were very financially vulnerable. And there were frequent injuries because of the nature of the work they were doing. And yet they didn't really have a say to get proper treatment. They were really pushed to continue working or lose their job. And many felt they were in a position where that wasn't an option. And just learning about the conditions and how the employer treated the employees, I just felt like, I don't know if I want to contribute to this anymore. And I wanted to learn more about how I could eat more vegetarian. I didn't at that time know much about veganism. And I was just like, I'm going to look into this. And I had recently been to a conference where I'd eaten some vegetarian meals that were delicious. So it kind of opened my eyes to the possibility that this might be doable. And I began buying a cookbook. I tried recipes. I had not been a cook before. I ate terribly before, really, and health. I ate a lot of microwave meals, comfort food, junk food, things that were easy. And I became determined, I'm going to learn how to make this work. And so I bought a cookbook. I even had to buy pots and pans because I was not a cook. And I went out that very day, like to the store, because I was like, as I was cooking, realizing, oh, I don't have what I need. And so I had to buy things. But that was the beginning of a journey, because I learned I loved to cook once I wasn't handling meat anymore. I hadn't even realized I didn't like to handle it. I just thought I had to. I thought there was no choice. And once I started reading, I learned, well, first of all, I don't have to eat animals to be healthy. In fact, I have a family history of heart disease. I would be healthier not eating animal products. So I really dove into learning the nutritional parts of it so that I felt like I would be healthy doing it, but also then learning about the animals. That was the turning point. No way was I going to go back and eat meat once I really learned what the whole process was for animals, and once it really sunk in. And over time, I came to realize I needed to make the full commitment to veganism, that as I learned more about how dairy, was the process for the cows, and, chickens laying eggs, and that they ended up all in the same slaughterhouses ultimately anyway, I just knew I couldn't continue having dairy or eggs. And that was a whole process for me to like really break through my disconnection. I think we're really raised in our culture to be disconnected from how our food comes to us. And there was a whole process I had to break through to like really feel like, what's it like for a dairy cow, and to really be so committed that, okay, I'm not going to have birthday cake with family if it has dairy in it, that sort of thing. So really starting to make that shift. And then, once I really took it all in, and I think Earthlings was the big turning point there, the documentary Earthlings, there was no way I was going back. And I was a full vegan in every way that I could be. And really learned to try to cope with the social challenges of that, because those are not always easy, when people around you may not be vegan. And as a psychologist, I knew I wanted to bring my background to help this cause, that it was no longer just about me and a lifestyle change. It was about like realizing like people are suffering on our planet because of how we eat. Animals are suffering because of the choices we humans are making, and the planet is suffering. And I just knew I had to kind of find a way to step up and do more using the gifts that I have. So that's what I'm discovering what that looks like. But part of it right now for me is I'm working on research for a book about veganism, where I've done surveys and interviews with vegans to learn about the positive impacts of a vegan lifestyle. So many people who aren't vegan think it's about deprivation. And what I've found from the people I've been interviewing and surveying is that while there are certainly challenges in being vegan in a non-vegan world, there's also peace and joy and fulfillment in living aligned with our values. And so that's what some of my research is showing. So I'm in the process of working on this book. And I'm also a psychology consultant with a program called We Did It Health that we'll touch on a little bit more later. But just on a journey to discover, how can I bring my gifts to help this cause? So yeah, so as we dive in now more to the stages of change, one thing that I find helpful in thinking about what do we want to communicate with other people is something I took from a book called Crucial Conversations. And we'll have a reference list of some of the books and things that I draw on for helping people communicate better as a vegan. But Crucial Conversations is not specifically a vegan book, but it's a communication book. And one of the things they say is start with heart. What do I want for myself, for the other person who I'm communicating with, for our relationship? And also beyond our relationship, what is it that I'm wanting to create? So holding all of that as you think about your intention for any communication, will be helpful as we go through the stages of change, to think about, like, maybe there's a person you're wanting to have better communication with about your veganism, or maybe there are people you want to inspire to awaken to this. Think about them and the kind of relationship you want with them. And yes, hold the bigger picture too of this more compassionate world that we talked about earlier. And so with the stages of change, it's important to understand these, because I think often if we changed quickly and easily, we expect everyone else to change the same way we did. As you can see, my process was slow. I grew up in Iowa, and I think I really believed, I'd been brainwashed to believe, like many of us, that I needed meat and dairy to be healthy and to survive. I didn't really think there was a choice. And so realizing that, some people do have an overnight change to veganism. It just, something hits them and they never turn back. For many of us, though, it is more of a process of seeds being planted that start that journey, and it may be more gradual. And so understanding that, because we can be more effective if we really understand the change process and can work with that, versus only being frustrated because someone didn't change the way we did, even though we wish they would. We definitely wish they would. And realizing, as you think about your own life, think about even things you wanted to change that were healthy, like maybe knowing you should exercise more. Think about times that process can be challenging to just even do what we know is good. And so to just understand that the change to veganism for many people has an additional block, in addition to change just being hard for some of us. With veganism, we are all raised in what Melanie Joy, the psychologist, calls a carnistic belief system. And carnism is basically the belief system that we're all raised in, that says to us that eating certain animals is ethical and appropriate. It's normal and natural and necessary, is what we are taught. Once we've dug into, learning more, we realize that's not true, but it's the prevalent belief system in our society. And it's in fact so prevalent, we don't even realize it's a choice until, again, we have that awakening, that lets us know there's a different option. So realize that that's another factor in why this whole change process can be hard for people. So think about your own change process when you became vegan. Was yours one of those immediate changes, or was it more gradual? Think about, were there seeds planted, or was it just one sudden event? And just kind of be reflecting on that as I go through the stages now. And let me just name what the stages are really quick, and then I'll explain a little bit about each one. The first stage in this model of the stages of change is pre-contemplation. And that means basically before we've really started to think even about change. And I'll explain more about that one in a moment. Then contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. And sometimes they'll also use termination, which kind of is when we have sort of completed the change process. So first, let's start with pre-contemplation, which is where most of the world is in terms of this whole vegan journey, unfortunately. But it's where we all start with any change. Is often we're just not even aware that there's a reason to change. We're not ready to change. This is true with anything that we may benefit from changing. So when we're in pre-contemplation, or another person is in pre-contemplation, they don't yet really know the benefits of changing something, and in this case, becoming vegan. They may not have really had an impetus to change. They may be defensive. And so the goal in this stage is actually not to move them into action, because that's really not going to happen. There's those two stages in between contemplation and preparation. And so really from pre-contemplation, the next step is for someone to actually move to where they'd actually start to even think about it. So keeping that in mind, like just trying to push someone to action when they're like totally on this other place of like, I haven't even thought of changing. I'm not even open to changing. Why are you telling me about this? I don't want to know. You're going to be wasting energy pushing action at that moment. Now, if they could become curious to contemplate, that might be a step you could consider. And maybe even more so just being a role model at that stage, just being an inspiring vegan role model that embodies compassion and health and is living your values in a way that is appealing to someone else, so that they might be like, I want to know more what she's doing or he's doing. But with the pre-contemplation, sometimes we can get caught up in arguments and things at that stage, and that may not be the most productive use of your time. Some people do change from pre-contemplation quickly, but just kind of keep in mind that that might not be the stage where the most change is going to happen yet. What usually will happen at some point is if someone is going to move forward in the change process, something brings them into contemplation where they begin to think like about the positives of change, reasons why it fits with their values or reasons why it would be beneficial. And in contemplation, we are still ambivalent. So people can get stuck in contemplation for a while sometimes where we go back and forth between the pros and the cons. Should I or shouldn't I? Is this in my best interest or not? We might be excited about the possibility of making a change into veganism and yet still be maybe deterred by certain negatives, like how would I handle certain situations, or how will people around me respond, or can I really do this? So in this stage in contemplation, the goal is to tip the scales where the positives of change and the belief that you can change outweighs any of the negatives or concerns. So in this stage, it might be, it might be giving people information. They might be more open to it at this stage. It might be giving them resources, not overwhelming them with them. And this might be a good stage to see what their interests are, because so often we want to give information that isn't really what they're interested in. So this would be a good time to see like, well, what seems to connect for them that they might be interested in knowing more about, that would tip the scales for them. And then preparation is next. That's when something has happened where our commitment to like, I want to do this, has now outweighed any of the negatives that we are fearing. And this is where we start to prepare for action. So this for me was when I went out and bought that vegetarian and vegan cookbook and bought the pots and pans and like tried that first recipe. It was also when I bought this book called Becoming Vegan that taught the nutritional aspects of vegan lifestyle. So I felt like confident that I could do this. It was me beginning to get rid of some of the things in my cupboard that I no longer wanted to eat. And then action is when we really start that vegan journey. That's when we really, okay, I'm not having meat or dairy or eggs anymore. I'm not buying leather, all those things. And this is where we really start to take action. This is a stage where like maybe the excitement of our journey is there. We start to form a new identity even of like me as a vegan who no longer eats or buys those other products. And it's a time to build our commitment to this new way of living. But the change process doesn't end there. And that's really important to know, because we often think when we've taken action, well, I'm there. But maintenance is always a key part of the change process, because there can be setbacks. There can be even relapses that people have when they're changing things. That's very common. And so maintenance is about learning how to handle situations that might challenge us so that we can stay committed and on track. And so it's really important to know that maintenance will be part of the journey for you or for others you're trying to support. So having your environment set up, having plenty of food that's vegan, meal planning, knowing how to handle traveling and social situations. And there's so many great resources out there to support with that. Like I'm a big believer in learning from people who have walked this journey before us. So I know for me, I read every book in the library when I first became vegetarian. And then when I became vegan, it was more on my Kindle, downloading every book I could download and read to just know the whys and the hows to support my journey. So, and of course, nowadays there's so much online as well. And in this maintenance stage, I'd also encourage you to celebrate the positives. Celebrate that you're having better health and more energy, that you're feeling more aligned with your values. Celebrate those things, because, when we're in cognitive dissonance, which is when we have beliefs or values that are not matching how we live, that's a weight on us, and we didn't even realize we had it. And so being vegan, it's like lifted, and it's just like so freeing. So really celebrating that. I'd encourage continue to hold that vision for the vegan world you want to see. There's something about what we focus on expands, and so by picturing the world you want to see, even though it's not here yet, it helps us take action that's in alignment with that and to create a way of being that is aligned with that. So that's maintenance, just continuing to like live that lifestyle, support, set up your environment, connect with a tribe of vegans, find, a group of vegans or groups of vegans that you can connect with so you're not alone on this journey, because we can feel really isolated. I know if I hadn't found so many online groups, it would be hard because my husband is vegan, and I have one vegan friend in my local area, but the rest of the people around me are not, and so it could be very isolating and sometimes a little demoralizing when you go to a social event or something and people are eating differently than what you now eat. So just, taking care of you during this maintenance stage. And if you're supporting another person who's on this journey, helping them to build these connections and supports, and setting up their lifestyle to support this, because there are certainly many people who become vegan and then maybe without enough support don't stay on the path. So this is where it's a really important time to build that support. And then that final stage they mentioned, termination. It's basically when we are so aligned with this lifestyle, it's no longer really an effort. It's just what we do. It's no longer something we have to so much think about or prepare for, even though we may do some preparation. It's just so natural. So you can think of where you are and maybe other people in your life, where they're at and how you might encourage them based on where they're at. So the final part that I wanted to share is just then what are some lessons we can take from that? So there's a few different thoughts that I have. I think I wrote down about 5 or 6 key points to take away. And I think the biggest one is that change is a process. And it can vary for us, as I mentioned earlier. For some people, it may be an overnight process, but for the majority of people, it is not. And for many people, many seeds are planted before the change actually takes root. And so that can give us hope and maybe patience, because it may be that the seeds you're planting with a person it may not be that your seeds are the one that are the final seed that turns them towards vegan or even vegetarian or even eating more plants and less animals. But you might be one part in that process, and it may be that something else over time is the thing that really brings them there. And so giving people time and space to process things you share with them or other things they may be learning, knowing that sometimes we have to take things in and integrate it before we're ready to act on it. And I would add in that positive support and encouragement tends to be more impactful in change than negative messages. So just think about if anybody ever was trying to encourage you to change. If someone gives you a very negative or critical message, it can make you feel feelings of shame or defensiveness, or just that you don't want to do it just because you're feeling pushed. So just realize, that our negative messages could lead to a shame response in others, and that doesn't make them open to change. When we feel judged or criticized or shamed, the part of our brain that's operating is our kind of fight, flight, freeze part of our brain, which is not the part of our brain that's curious and open. And so just realizing, how do I make the conversation safe and yet still impactful? Realizing there's a difference between being assertive and aggressive. Assertive can be being very direct and open with somebody about, your feelings on something, but you're doing it in a way that's not attacking. So keeping in mind, positive messages, encouragement. And, I think all the impactful vegan advocates that I've met, they might have struggled in the beginning, early in their vegan journey, with that more negative messaging. Like a lot of us have, where we get excited or we get frustrated and we might share in a way that just doesn't have the effect we'd hope. But all the ones that I've come to admire over time learned that there was a better way. and that it did involve being somewhat patient, even though that's not easy. So, and so along with that is just that change is more likely if the person feels the change is their own choice. So it's again that idea of the planting seeds and then stepping back. If they feel like, okay, you've given me information and now I'm processing it, and I might look up some stuff on my own and then I make that decision, that feels so much more empowering than like someone told me I had to do it or I'm a bad person. So how do I encourage them in a way that it becomes their own choice? Like ask questions that might get them to think, for example. And there are so many great teachers of this. I did create a resource list that Mariquita and I will find a way to share with you of some of the teachers in the vegan world that have really learned ways to communicate that help open people's minds and hearts. Another lesson or takeaway from the stages of change is just looking at if the person is kind of moving towards contemplation or preparation, what are their interests or concerns that you can really help them learn more about? You know, if it is more health, keep in mind that many people that become vegan for health later really open up to the animals too, because once they're no longer in cognitive dissonance by, you know, they've changed now to eating plants, they're much more open to like learning about the animals as well. And I've really found that in my research, that some people that chose veganism for health reasons are now very, you know, just so compassionate for the animals as well. So there are different doors that people enter in, and seeing like which door might this person be open to? Are they really an environmental person? That might be the path for them. So, and if they love animals, maybe there's baby steps you can take to help them realize how much, you know, how smart pigs are, for example, you know, and other farm animals. Stay connected with your own vision and your own self-care through all of this. If you're vibrant and healthy, you're going to be a more kind of powerful role model for others who might be considering this journey of veganism. And I would add, if you are dealing with any grief or trauma or the symptoms that Claire Mann describes of dystopia, with kind of the grief and anguish that can come with learning about animal agriculture, it's normal, first of all, to feel these things. This is when we learn about horrific things, it's normal to go through this. So first, just to normalize it. But if it continues on too long or you're having a hard time getting through it, seek support. You know, either the list of books that we will give you. I know Awesome Mariquita is offering coaching programs and classes that could be helpful. There are vegan therapists out there. There's even a group on Facebook of vegan mental health providers. So there are so many resources to help you if you are struggling, because you matter too. Like, this is a circle of compassion. We are animals also. A circle of compassion that includes us, extends to the animals and all beings, and even extends to those who are still pre-vegans that we hope will come along this path with us. Because one thing that really struck me that I think is so important to remember is I had learned that for any major social justice change that's happened, it wasn't that a majority of the population had to adopt it. It was that it started with 10% of the population being deeply committed to it. And that led to a tipping point that opened up more and more people to that change. So just realize any impact we can have is going to have a ripple, and it may be slower than we want, but it's the only way we have right now. So, and we each contribute in our own way with our own gifts. And so, you know, I'm blessed to be part of this vegan community because I've met so many amazing people who really care so deeply. It's such a blessing. And in view of this whole self-compassion that extends outward, I would like to close briefly with a very brief loving kindness meditation. Then we can move more into the question part of it. So loving kindness meditation is a way of extending compassion first to yourself and then outward to those you love and to all beings. And so we'll just do a very brief version of it. You can also Google loving kindness meditation and find all different variations of it. So if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes for just a moment or just gaze off somewhere and just take a few slow, deep breaths again. We just covered a lot of information And so just breathe in, what you've taken in from this time. And first sending the loving kindness to yourself. And I'll say the words and you can just kind of meditate on them as I say them. May I be peaceful. Bringing that to yourself. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I live with joy, freedom, and peace. And then think of some people and or animals who are dear to you and send the loving kindness to them. Picture their faces and just sending the message to them. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be free from suffering. And may you live with joy and peace. And then finally, may all beings everywhere be happy, peaceful, and free. And just a few deep breaths to close that out. And coming back fully into the space when you're ready.
That was very peaceful. Thank you.
Hmm.
Well, I see that Trisha's found us, and
Oh, good.
yeah, I don't think it's being posted to Facebook, but anyway, if it's not, I apologize, but we're going to be doing the replay, so please ask questions in the chat. And do you see that? Let's see what Trisha's saying. Thanks for watching, everybody. She's saying, I'll read it. She'll say, that's where I'm struggling, being newly vegan and hopping right into activism and really diving in deep to the truth. I feel a pressure that this needs to change now, even though that I'm aware that this is not realistic. The fact that I have the images in my mind of what is happening every 12 seconds of every day makes me feel helpless. I find that I don't want to be around anyone who is not awakened to this horrific truth and feel alone in my community of unconscious carness.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. Yeah. And thank you for sharing, Trisha. It makes me feel sad, and it makes me feel with you, because I think when we really see the videos and see, the realities, it's so deeply painful, because somehow we've been blocked from really getting it before, earlier in our lives, and then something, made us realize, like, oh my goodness, this is happening, and I love animals. How could I have ever participated? And how can people I love participate now that I'm aware? Yeah, and I just really feel with you, Trisha. I know that there's different times it hits me harder, and I can feel that pain more fully. Now it's been 15 years since I first, became vegetarian and really started to awaken, and then at least a few years since I think, got fully the whole vegan message. So I'm relating to like what that process has been like for me and what it's like for other vegans I know. It's normal to feel what you're feeling. We're facing a reality that is so painful, and yet the question becomes, how do we become activists or advocates for change in a way that is going to be sustainable and compassionate, for us and for those that we want to influence. I think one thing that helped me was when I finally really took in how conditioned we are. I think at first I didn't fully get that. I thought once I got it, everybody should get it. Why don't they? And it took me a long time to really understand how much the conditioning is and what a shift it is to really break out of it. I mean, some have compared it to like the Matrix, and it is a little bit like that. That sort of it is challenging for many people to break through that. And so if it's hard to have compassion for people who haven't yet broken through, I can understand that. And yet maybe the challenge can be is, how do I first take care of me? Because if I'm not sustainable in this vegan journey, it's going to be hard for me to have the impact I want to have. So really having compassion for your own heart through this, like you have a sensitive, compassionate heart and this is hurting you. So what are the supports that you might need? And this, I'm speaking not just to Tricia here, but I think to many vegans who feel the same way that she very kindly expressed. So because I hear this message a lot. I will say the list of books that we'll have in the resources, and then there's a couple of videos, are helpful because they all really address this question. They all, in a way, have chapters or sections that really have to do with how do I handle it in a way that, first of all, helps me deal with my emotional pain about this and work through that to a place where I can be a compassionate advocate. So I don't have a quick answer for it. I think that there's resources to support us through that, to get through to the other side of, it's almost like a post-traumatic stress at first for some of us. And how do we get through to the other side of that where we can be effective in how we help? Because unfortunately, you're right. It should happen right away. It needs to change right away. And yet no one of us has been given us that much power. So all we can do is our part. And I mentioned that cell in the body. I think of us as all cells in like a larger body that each have a contributing role to play in creating this better world. And so what is your part? And can you take meaning and purpose and fulfillment in just doing your part and trusting that there's a whole system of other cells in this larger body that are all each contributing our part, and more will be joining us. So definitely encourage, though, vegan support groups and maybe your own coach or therapist that's vegan to help through it as well, if it's really hard and painful for you, because we sometimes need support to get through that. Is there anything you'd want to add, Mariquita? Because I know this is sort of your area as well. I don't know if there's anything else you'd want to add.
Well, I think, those feelings, allowing the feelings and really sending them love, sitting back and seeing that you how really honoring your heart, that it's so tender, that and knowing that does hurt, and that just shows what a beautiful person you are. And to really sit in that energy of sending love to yourself, to those hurt feelings, and maybe get with some friends and maybe have a little group of that, where you could come together. And right now we're going to spend 10 minutes sending love to each other's beautiful heart, and trying to, and just allowing it to be what it is, and not thinking it as a negative thing, but it's a beautiful thing, that you have this beautiful compassion inside your soul. And it's so true, and I loved what you were saying about how the brain shuts down. You were saying, and can you explain that a little bit again? And thinking about when people feel like the fight or flight or defensiveness, why they go into defensiveness, and how the brain shuts down, because that also is kind of freeing, knowing that it's not about us.
Yes. Like, how do we communicate in a way that actually works with how our human brain operates? So the parts of our brain that are inquisitive, curious, open to learning, ready for change, is usually located more in our frontal lobes. And it's sort of, the wise and balanced part of our brain that can integrate everything, both our feelings and our logic to make wise decisions. But we have more primitive parts of our brain that are there for survival. And basically the fight or flight parts of our brain, are there to help us so that if there was a life-threatening danger, we could survive. We'd either know to fight or flee or freeze. And it's not even conscious. This part of our brain just takes over and makes a decision for us. But we humans are so socially, we need social interaction so much as part of our survival that even a social threat can threaten our fight or flight system. So even if we're not really in life or death danger, if somebody says something to us that is hurtful or where we feel attacked or vulnerable, that also sets off this fight or flight response. And even though it's not necessarily very helpful, any of us can think of times where that's happened to us. Someone maybe said something in an angry way, or they seemed critical or judgmental. We shut down and we either go into freeze, where we just shut down, we go into flight where we just want to get away, or we go into fight, which is wanting to attack back. And so when someone is in fight or flight, where they're either freezing and shutting down or pulling away, or they're attacking back at you, you can know in that moment, and this Crucial Conversations teaches this beautifully, that they're not feeling safe. And if they're not feeling safe with you, they're not going to be open to what you're saying. So part of our goal as vegan communicators is learning how to make an interaction safe. And there's ways to share really difficult information in a way that actually is still connected and makes the other person feel somewhat open to hearing what you want to share. Now, we can't do that with everybody. If someone is totally in that pre-contemplation stage and they're not even going to listen at all, we might be wasting our energy there. There's a lot of people that are more open to change that would probably benefit a lot more from directing more attention there. So just kind of keeping that in mind. And in the meantime, taking care of our own inner journey with veganism and the emotions we go through so that eventually we can be that more, we can learn these skills. They are learnable skills, but when we're in our own emotional pain, we do have to have that self-compassion for the part of you that is feeling this. And I do feel that there's supports out there to help that part of the journey to get through to a place where there can be more joy that at least I'm doing my part, I can't do it all. I wish I could, but I wasn't given that much power, but I can do my part. So
I love that. And I love that. It's kind of, I think that when we realize that these people are on that different areas and the stages of change where we can say that they're not ready, but there might be someone else that, let's move to someone else that might be more receptive and just allow them to be, okay, they're in that stage where they're not ready. So I'm not going to put that energy out to cause any conflict between me and them. Allow them to be in that. Allow them just to be, in that stage where we go out to every day on our life and saying, allow people to be in whatever stage they are in. And I respect them for that, kind of putting that out as a mantra before we leave the house, right? And then I'm also discovering who would be in a different stage that would be open to it. And I'm going to really look to discover that. And then I'm going to give my energy to those people. And maybe I won't find anyone today, and that's okay. But being okay with all of it, kind of setting that expectation where we're just allowing and we're explorers and looking.
Yes. And when you're that vegan role model, you never know how you might impact someone who will come to you later and say, I wasn't really ready to listen to what you said before, but now seeing how you live your life, I've been transformed. I want to change my life too.
Yes, that's so true. We don't know what's going behind the scenes. They might not say anything, but they might be watching. And then one day there's the shift, like you're saying, all those tiny experiences in their life. And then the shift comes. So we just don't ever know. So we might say, oh, they're hopeless, but that's just not necessarily the case at all. We don't know. I used to think that my friend in college was crazy for being a vegetarian. And I thought, no way, what are you doing? Right? And so here I am years later, right? I never would have said, no way. But That was
Yes.
all the little experiences in my life. So yes, definitely. And Susan is saying, "Hey, ladies, I'm loving this."
Thank
And
you, Susan. I'm glad you're here.
yeah, we had a great conversation yesterday with her bird wisdom. And then Trisha's saying, I own a child care program here in Colorado, and I transitioned it to a vegan diet immediately when I awakened. And now I'm taking on a vegan business coach that is going to help me build a business where I'm educating and providing other child care providers a place to learn to turn their business into a plant-based programs. And on the flip side, I will be helping families find these vegan programs.
That's great.
Yeah, that's great, huh? Aside from the activism work I'm doing with Anonymous for the Voiceless, I feel I can make an impact.
Yeah. Wow, just what you described, like those are the things that make an impact. Every way that we can use our gifts to educate, have people know there's options, and you're making an impact in so many ways there. I really admire that. And it gives you a channel for the feelings that you're having to put them towards something meaningful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, and really, Trisha has been watching these live streams, so I'm honored that you're here again, everyone that's watching. And I think celebrating these wonderful, I mean, there's never too small a moment to celebrate, right? And then the awakening is a huge celebration, and that your children are there with you on the path, and that you're educating all these other families in joyfulness. And like I said before, allowing all feelings to come in and loving all the feelings, and like you said, Angela, normalizing them, which is beautiful. These feelings are normal. It just shows what tremendous empathy we have and compassion, and how special we are. In this planet, because we have awakened, and to give thanks for this awakening that we've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about defensiveness? And so when people are defensive, what's underlying, would you say there? I mean, I think you said about the fight or flight, but what other feelings are there that we could kind of understand? Why are they being so defensive? I know a lot of people get angry, like, why don't they want to hear? Why are they saying that? Why are they making fun? What's causing that, underlying that?
Yeah, that could be a complicated question, but some thoughts on that. First of all, defensiveness can be activated. Our defenses can be healthy things sometimes. There are ways that we try not to feel our feelings in a sense. There are ways that we try to protect ourselves either from feeling painful feelings or from feeling shamed or made to look bad. So I think defensiveness can occur in both cases. Sometimes it's just simply because something is too painful for us to face just yet, and we use our defenses, different sorts of defenses, to avoid that. But we also can become defensive if we feel in some way attacked or made to feel like we're a bad person. It's really a primal desire for us to feel like good people. That's where sometimes the whole thing with the cognitive dissonance that we talked about earlier is there's two ways to cope with cognitive dissonance. It's, one is that we change our behaviors so that they are in alignment with our values once we realize that they aren't. And that's what we've tried to do as vegans. But for people that are feeling sort of threatened by making a change and not yet ready to make a change, they'll do the opposite, which is they'll try to change their beliefs to convince themselves that they are, in alignment. So yes, I do imagine there is, I see the question about, can the guilt that non-vegans feel provoke defensiveness? I think it could be an unconscious guilt, where they're not even necessarily aware that there's guilt, because it's sort of this subconscious weight that many of us carry until we realize like why we're carrying it, that I never really felt good about eating meat, but I thought I had no choice. So yes, I think that sort of sometimes conscious and sometimes subconscious guilt could provoke the defensiveness. It's an uncomfortable feeling.
I see that too. And I think that then they're going to have to question everything that they've been, their whole foundational belief system, right? And then a lot of parents, it's threatening that, like, did I raise my child the wrong way? Oh my gosh. And then they're thinking, oh, then that shame coming, like, oh, I can't even put my head around this. I can't wrap my head around this. And then I've raised my child wrong. And what have I done this whole life? So it's a big thing.
Yes, definitely. And yeah, it's changing the belief system we've been raised with, and the people that we trusted that also believed this belief system. We're having to kind of question everything. And I think for some of us, the awakening is so strong that just overtakes all of that immediately. But I think for other people, that journey is a little harder, whether it is that Dr. Melanie Joy suggests that some people might be more wired to please socially. And so for some of them, it can be a little harder to buck the system and do this thing that is sort of not the norm. I think also some of us are more naturally sensitive. And so I think this awakening happens more quickly for those whose emotional system is more naturally sensitive. But this is a question that so many people are trying to discover, like, how do we awaken more people and do it in a way that actually will be effective so that we can have the impact we want to have?
Yeah. Well, what was the turning point with you again when you switched to vegan?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, with the vegetarian, it was that program, and then it was all the learning. And I did learn, to some degree about dairy and eggs, but I think at first it felt too hard. I hadn't yet connected as fully with the pain of that as I had with meat. I could just really see it and feel it with meat. And yet at first with dairy and eggs, I could not see it and feel it in quite the same way at first. And I think it was my own growth journey that I was trying to be more aligned and authentic in all kinds of ways, that finally this came up as something where I was not aligned. I was in a feminine power coaching program that you know about, Mariquita. And that program taught me to be more true to myself. And I realized this old tendency towards people pleasing that kind of held me back from fully standing my ground on this. And so I just realized this is one area that's not fully in alignment. I'm close, but I'm not fully there. And I even had discovered that dairy gave me allergy symptoms, and that when I didn't have it, I felt better. So it's like on every level, so once I really made myself watch some videos and learn more fully about dairy and eggs, it just finally was that turning point of there's no going back. But it was, I think, an inner awakening of kind of like trusting myself more and wanting to be more authentic and true to my values in every way possible. And it's still a journey. I think we all, find that there's ways we could be more environmentally conscious, more compassionate. So it's still a journey, but at least I know that I'm doing all I know to do right now.
Right. Yeah. And who is one person that you have made a change to vegan? I mean, an example of that.
I can think of one person is coming to mind right now. I am part of this therapist group, and I was sharing with them about being vegan and that I'd started a blog, and that I was doing this research for a book. And I was a little hesitant to share because none of them are vegan, and it felt a little uncomfortable. And one of them seemed a little interested, but she also had an autoimmune disease and just kept coming up with all these things that she'd been told by her doctor that she couldn't eat, that were all plant-based foods. And so she had this idea that I can't go vegan because I can't eat this, 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 and this. And I just kind of I didn't push her. I just said, there is a doctor, who works with autoimmune diseases who is plant-based. And I gave her the name of the doctor, Dr. Brooke Goldner. You might look up some of her stuff, but I just stepped back because she did seem defensive. And I was just like, okay, not pushing it here. It was vulnerable enough for me just to share my own thing, because I guess I'm a bit of an introvert. And so, it was a big step for me. So then she came back to me with an email a couple months later. She had watched The Game Changers, and now she wanted to go vegan. So now it was like, tell me how. Then I shared with her all these resources. So then she was in preparation action. And I just shared with her all kinds of resources. And then as she went through action and maintenance, she needed more support. I gave her some other information, and it was joyful and beautiful. It was just, so that was a great example for me to like trust more of the process. If I'd been really, really pushy or made her feel terrible that first conversation, she wouldn't have come to me later with questions when she was ready.
Yeah, well, that's a great example. Yeah, and so I think that Trisha, that this is resonating with her. So I'm very thankful for everybody that's been watching, Angela.
Yes, and anybody that watches later, that'll be awesome.
Definitely. And so I'm so thankful that you came and to explain all this to us. And I really want is there anything else you wanted to say before you tell everyone how to get a hold of you? Because we really want everyone to be able to reach out. And do you want to?
No, I just feel really blessed to be here. I just so strongly feel like my life has changed for the better being vegan, that even though there's emotions that can be really difficult, I feel like this alignment, that it feels so peaceful, and I'm just so grateful for whatever it was that kind of brought me to this place. I'm so grateful, and I just love connecting with other vegans. So I'm just grateful to be here, and if there's questions people have on this topic, certainly we can talk about how they could reach out to me. Right now, I'm primarily working on my book and then doing a blog related to thriving emotionally as a vegan. And over time, I will offer some coaching types of programs. That'll be maybe in the summer or fall. I'll be at that point. So.
And you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and where's the best? And then you have what's the name of your webpage?
Yeah. So primarily on LinkedIn. I have not done a lot on Facebook yet, but LinkedIn, and under my name, Angela Crawford, PhD. And then my website is, I don't know if I'm able to type it. I don't seem to see where I could type it in the chat, but it's www.angelacrawfordphd.com.
Okay. Yeah, we can add it to the chat afterwards, definitely. And the contact information, because, and we also both are a group we're members of a group called We Did It Health.
Yes.
And that's really promoting the plant-based whole foods diet. And so.
Yes. And the message of the We Did It Health, although it started more based on the health message, it has really grown to incorporate vegans from all different aspects. Many ethical vegans are part of this group, environmental focused vegans as well. And when you go to wedidit.health, there's a 1-question survey that is about how a vegan and or plant-based lifestyle has changed your health and your life. And you just put that, and it helps to spread the message of the positive impacts of a vegan lifestyle. And then as part of doing that, you then get on their email list, which has very helpful information, presentations, and also an ebook that I authored with them called 7 Best Practices to Inspire Your Loved Ones to Go Plant-Based. So we do welcome you to go there as well.
Yeah, it's a wonderful site. There's a lot of support there too. So we don't want anyone to feel alone. Your feelings are beautiful. And, I'm just very honored that we have this wonderful group. And
that's great, Trisha. So she's also part of that group. Awesome.
Yeah, she is.
And there's another post. Okay. My best friend has been vegan for 5 years, and I truly believe the 100-point system that Joey Carbstrong talked about was exactly what happened to me over time. So,
wow.
Dairy video by accident, and boom, eyes wide open. Everything changed overnight. I was dropped on a new planet. Yes, I relate. Oh, that's great that you're reading the ebook too, Trisha. Awesome.
Yeah, and that she met Peter. Peter's wonderful. And we encourage everyone to meet Peter.
Yes.
Yeah, because he's really making a difference in this world. Well, we all are. So
it's like each with our gifts. I just have already learned a lot today from just the sharing that's already happened. So.
I know, huh? We're celebrating all of us. Trisha's over there, Susan with her pigeons and birds, and
Angela that had mentioned to come on earlier, and some of the others that we know will join us later as well.
Right. And Tammy was watching. So, I mean, we're all doing it, and it's just a beautiful process. So I'm honoring everyone for joining us today. And I really want to thank you for the wisdom you brought. And it's been eye opening. So,
Great. Well, I'm glad to be here, and I look forward to the other presentations too, because I've watched some of the others. They've been really helpful for me too.
well, thank you so much. And thanks, everybody. I guess we will see you next time on in this beautiful space. So have a blessed day, everybody.